Day, great people.
What's going on, folks?
Happy day.
Hey, so this interview popped up with Piers did with Norman Finkelstein on Israel. Finkelstein. Obviously, he's Jewish with that last name.
Maybe not.
No, yeah, that's a Jewish last name.
Okay.
Like
Well, I had a professor named Dr. Finkelstein when I was in undergrad. It was a she.
And where was she from?
And I don't know, but she wasn't Jewish.
Florida.
I don't know.
Now, I mean, you could have Jewish, upbringing. That's why the corner right there, like it's gonna run to the back of your head right now.
Good.
Had them thick eyebrows like Mama Shirley had.
I don't have yesterday. Thick eyebrows.
They were about that big.
You better leave my mama eyebrows alone.
She like, huh, sugar?
You so wrong. You are so wrong.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right. So what I want to do, I want to look at first. I want to play this. I'm gonna review with y'all who Norman Finkelstein is. Not all the way, but I just want to get some of the key points. Who he is and what is he about regarding this subject, and why people are so because people want us to review this because I know that he's in favor of Palestine, but I don't know about Hamas per se, but I'm curious to say I'm gonna read this article real quick for him.
So they want us to review this because he's in favor of Palestine?
Not really because in favor of Palestine, but they want us to see our take on this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people want to see our take on this. So I want to show.
So these comments are probably going to be turned off in this video.
Not really. No, I mean, because he's in support of.
But regardless of what we say, people still formulate their own opinions.
True.
Is this an article?
This is an article, but it will be a video.
Oh, okay.
It will be.
Yeah. People don't think before they open their mouth. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah. So Norman Gary Finkelstein is an American political scientist and activist. His primary fields of research are Israel-Palestine conflict and the politics of the Holocaust.
Okay.
He is a graduate of Binghamton University and received a PhD in political science at Princeton University. He's held faculty positions at Brooklyn College, Ruler College, Hunter College, New York University, DePaul University, and he was an assistant principal
slow down.
Assistant professor from 01 to 07. So let me go down to what his I'm gonna go down right to where it is, what his area, his view. So his views are on Israel and Palestine conflict. So Finkelstein is a sharp critic of the state of Israel, discussing his book Beyond Shashapaz, Israel historian called Finkelstein Critique of Israel, extremely detailed, well documented, and accurate. So he said, I think Israel, as a number of commentators pointed out, is becoming an insane state. And we have to be honest about that. While the rest of the world wants peace, Europe wants peace. The U.S. wants peace. But the state wants war and war and war. In the first week of massacres, there were reports in Israel's press that Israel did not want to pull all its ground forces in Gaza because it was preparing attacks on Iran.
Yeah. Israel did not want to put. You said pull. It's a difference.
It didn't want to put all his ground attacks in Gaza because it was preparing to attack on Iran. Then there were reports it was planning to attack Lebanon. It is a lunatic state. When he asks how he, as the son of a Holocaust survivor, felt about Israel's operation in Gaza, Finkelstein replied, "It has been a long time since I felt any emotional connection with the state of Israel, which relentlessly and brutally and inhumanely kept these vicious, murderous wars. It's a vandal state. There's a Russian writer who once described vandal states as Genghis Khan with a telegraph. Israel is Genghis Khan with a computer. I feel no emotion of affinity with that state. I have some good friends and their families there, and of course I would not want any of them to be hurt," they said. "Sometimes I feel that Israel has come out of the boils of hell, a satanic state." Okay. All right. So that's who he is. That's who he is. So now he's interviewing on Piers Morgan's on channel.
So this ferocious
and
criticism of Israel.
Piers is going to attack it and say, "Hey, look all the horrible thing Hamas has done." So I'm really curious to see what he says on it. Because now you know the take and know what he's about. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Those attacks on Gaza. Many of you have called for him to appear on this show with thousands of comments like this one. I wonder if Piers Morgan will be brave enough to have Norman Finkelstein on his show. Well, I'm pleased to say the answer is yes, because we believe in being uncensored here and hearing from all voices. And so I'm joined now by Professor Norman Finkelstein. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it. Like I said, a lot of people wanted me to interview. You yourself tweeted that we hadn't done it, so here we are. I'm glad about it. I think you're an influential voice, and you've obviously been very vocal about this since it all kicked off. I want to take you back, if I may, to October the 7th, because your first reaction to what happened on October the 7th incensed many people. You posted on Substack a piece about what had happened on the day, and it included this: for the past 20 years, the people of Gaza, half of whom are children, have been immured in a concentration camp. Today they breach the camp's walls. If we honour John Brown's armed resistance to slavery, if we honour the Jews who revolted in the Warsaw Ghetto, the moral consistency commands that we honour the heroic resistance in Gaza. I, for one, will never begrudge. On the contrary, it warms every fibre of my soul. The scenes of Gaza's smiling children as their arrogant Jewish supremacist oppressors have finally been humbled. And you ended by saying, the stars above in heaven are looking kindly down. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The souls of Gaza go marching on.
Wow.
With the benefit of a few weeks now, do you regret the tone of that initial response to what happened?
My initial response was to the initial news stories. You will recall, I'm sure, that initially what we were informed was that there was a breakout from Gaza concentration camp, that approximately 1,500 people had broken out, and that about 50 people, that was the initial number that was given, approximately 50 Israelis were killed. The number gradually grew, went from 50, a couple of days later it went to 100, and I'm sure you'll remember the number didn't reach 1,400 until about 10 days later. Initially, it was reasonable, it was reasonable to assume that people had been killed in a firefight, which was not the case, at least not fully the case. So my initial reaction was to the initial news stories. By the third or fourth day, I was clearly compelled to rethink my initial statements and try to make sense of what was clearly a moral quandary. And at that point, I considered my judgment on the basis of the new information that was available.
Okay.
And my own sense, yes, go ahead.
I just want to look. I've done a timeline for my own benefit based on what happened that day. We know the attacks began at 6:30 in the morning. We know that at 11:18 a.m. Israel confirmed 40 dead, 700 injured. At 11:35, Benjamin Netanyahu said we are at war. At 12:30 that day, at lunchtime, I tweeted horrifying and appalling scenes from Israel. This murderous, indiscriminate Hamas terror attack on Israeli people is shameful and indefensible. By 4:17, Israel said 100 were dead at least, 985 wounded. Civilian hostages have been taken. At 4 o'clock, a little later than that, around the same time, footage is released of the attack reporting that 3,000 bombs and firearms have been fired off by Hamas. Civilians have been killed, and so on. And yet at 6:30, and then again at 9:16, you were retweeting your initial Substack, and you then added at 9:16 that you felt the hostage situation was crocodile tears. So I would take issue with your statement that you thought it was only after 2 or 3 days that anyone had a clue about the scale of what had happened here. It was very obvious during that Saturday about the mounting scale of horror. And I just don't understand why someone as scholarly as you, as expert in this region, in this conflict as you are, why your response would be that for several days, one of glorifying in the in what you called heroic resistance, whereas mine, and I've always tried to be fair-minded about this conflict and reported it for CNN and tried to be fair and accurate as and when I've seen it, that I, at midday that day, I'm talking about a murderous, indiscriminate terror attack and horrifying and appalling scenes. I just don't believe that you weren't aware, with great respect, about the scale of what was going on.
Okay, Piers, let me begin by saying I want to have a civil conversation, and I'm going to do my darndest to remain faithful to the facts and faithful to truth. I'll do my darndest not to exaggerate. The first thing I have to say is I don't tweet. I've never been on Twitter. I have 3 young tech people who I send statements to, and then they make the decision where to place it on Substack, on Twitter, and so forth. Okay, I just want to clear that up.
It's not
I
me.
made one statement on the first day on the basis of the information that was available to me. The information was 50 people had been killed. Now, my memory is, but I won't claim my memory is infallible, the numbers didn't start to grow until the next day.
That's not true.
As the numbers, okay.
It's just not true.
Piers.
Well, Professor, with respect,
Okay, I'm not going to.
It's not true.
Piers. Yeah, but you have to listen to what I say.
But you want me to believe you when you say you weren't aware of the scale of this for several
Piers,
days. I
wait.
find that I'm incredulous that you want me to believe that.
Okay, Piers, I'm not going to force you to believe it, and I'm not going to even try to impose my will. I'm simply saying, as a factual matter, speaking for myself, I was not aware that the numbers had been beyond 50 when I made that statement. I will further state that to my knowledge, I could be mistaken, that I did not make another statement until the numbers started to grow, and I admit, I have said to you, it was a moral quandary for me. And I said in many interviews that it was for me a very burdened moment because I wasn't entirely confident in my moral judgment. And it was at that point that I started to look back at what the white abolitionists had to say when Nat Turner carried out a slave rebellion and many whites were hacked to death, children were beheaded, and I wanted to see, because I was not confident of my moral judgment, I wanted to see what did the white abolitionists, those who fought against slavery, had to say. And I looked at what William Lloyd Garrison, probably the most famous of the white abolitionists, and he said, horrible things happened during Nat Turner's rebellion, but if you read his statement, he wouldn't condemn Nat Turner or Nat Turner's
All right, well, let me ask you.
Confederates.
Okay, so let me ask you. Let me ask you. Okay, listen, I've heard you say this before, that analogy. That's fine. But let me ask you, given you now know the scale of what happened, given you know 12...
So now I see why he used the Nat Turner scenario, because the slaves rebelled and then they fought back.
So that's kind of like on the lines of where Andrew Tate was going.
Correct.
100 people were killed, including 800 or so completely innocent civilians. We know that children were killed, that grandmothers were killed, and their deaths FaceTime to their families. We know that over 200 people were kidnapped and taken hostage. Given you know the full scale of this attack, I've asked a lot of guests these 2 questions, and I'll be curious about your answer. One, would you categorize it as a terror attack? And secondly, would you condemn Hamas for what they did?
My view is as follows. Number one, as far as the evidence shows now, atrocities occurred on October 7th. The magnitude of the atrocities and the types of atrocities, for example, were children beheaded, were women raped. That remains, so far as I can tell from the evidence, an open question. However, that there were atrocities that occurred my answer is yes. Number two, that's a factual question. Then there's
Well, the question was
legal
it a
question.
terror attack?
Right.
Yeah. Well, atrocities, it seems to me, denotes a terror attack.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
what atrocities
Okay,
are.
thank you.
Okay. So, number two, that's the factual question. And then there is the legal question. As a matter of law, it seems unquestionable that the people who perpetrated these atrocities would be prosecuted and convicted in a court of law. However, I would say on the legal question, I should think that there would be some mercy shown because those who carried out the atrocities were concentration camp inmates. Number three, which I think is the one that concerns you the most, is the moral question. And at a moral level, my view is, my basic precept, we may disagree, my basic precept is that there but for the grace of God go I. That is to say, I'm very reluctant to condemn people who are in a position or in a condition such that were I in that position or condition, I'm not sure what I would do. Now, the 1,500 young men who burst the gates of Gaza, they were born into a concentration camp. They lived for 2 decades in a concentration camp. They had no past, they had no present, they had no future, they had no jobs. Half of them, according to humanitarian organizations, suffered from what's called severe food insecurity. And then on top of that, as I'm sure you know, Piers, because you keep up with the news, periodically Israel goes into Gaza and it mows the lawn. And you know what mows the lawn means. It means a high-tech massacre in Gaza. In 2008-9, Operation Cast Lead. 2012, Operation Pillar of Defense. 2014, Operation Protective Edge. And in each of these high-tech massacres visited the people of Gaza, in some cases hundreds, in some cases thousands of Palestinians are killed.
Okay, and let me ask
in fact, just in
well, let me ask you on that
so
point.
In light of,
And
I
on
want
that
to
point,
finish your,
I've got one
your-
question
yeah.
about that. In that period,
Yes.
in that period, and by the way, I've been condemnatory of some of the things you've just talked about publicly. I've tweeted my condemnation of some of these things. And I've tried to shine a light on the plight of the Palestinians for many, many years. And I feel that the oppression of the Palestinian people for many decades has been absolutely outrageous. So on that, we can completely agree. But when it comes to what you're saying here, it seems to me what you're trying to paint is a picture of some kind of moral justification for what Hamas did. And that's where you lose me, because I don't see why there could be anyone who can see the scale of what Hamas did on October the 7th and not simply condemn it out of hand. You may also want to condemn some of the response by Israel. That's completely normal. I would say that there are serious question marks about the...
So that just shows you how deep this thing is.
Right.
So it's one view that the media gives to you. It's another view that you think that you're supposed to support as a Christian. Then there's the view of what is really touching
So
down
it's
and
your
happening.
side, they side, and then the truth.
The truth.
And that's when you have to really, if you don't know like how all of this has began, then you really have to you be a little bit more reserved before giving your opinions, because you don't know, and you could be giving it from a limited side of view based off the media coverage that you watched.
Yep.
And even with watching the documentary that I looked at, it still stemmed back, from the Palestinians wanting to be able to have their,
Palestinians.
yes,
Yeah.
their land, wanting to, and this thing is tough. It's like,
So that's why I always told you, I said I keep it in the neutral zone, because neither side is right. So I can't say what makes a person go war out. People have been warring for hundreds, thousands of years, been warring.
yeah.
So I can't say you should do this and you shouldn't do that. But what I clearly can say is that there needs to be peace. And I'm always, whether people like it or not, whether you don't believe in Christ, you support Prophet Muhammad, not you believe in, you're Muslim, that I feel as a believer in Christ Jesus, from the peace in Christ Jesus would be a beautiful thing to be over in that land for peace reasons, but I mean for peace in general. But because there's still no peace, it's still war of the land, the grounds, the land. But if you listen to this, it just shows you how Israel is not scot-free. Israel actually is painted to Israel being worse than way worse than the Hamas could ever be. He said that the people that were Hamas were people coming out of concentration camp. These people going, they straight out of concentration camp, and they be like, forget this. We can't get no jobs. We can't get this. We can't forget this. So they have nothing else to live for. They're
now you can understand Tate's point of view.
Correct.
As to why he was saying that, it was sounding a little subjective.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to clearly, say it full out right. But now it's more clear as to why he was, his rationale behind what he didn't say.
Correct.
Wow.
Proportionality of what they've been doing. But if you can't start from a basic humanity position of saying what happened on October the 7th was a disgusting terror attack worthy of condemnation, then for me, I find it very hard to then respect anyone's demand for people to condemn Israel and their response.
Piers, I'm trying to be candid with you. Number one, I appreciate your humanity. I do. I don't know you from Adam. I'm not a TV or a television or a social media kind of person. I'm a book person. I'm old-fashioned. However, I do recall that when that famous moment when Susan Boyle appeared on Britain's Got Talent, and I remember the camera turning to you, focusing on you. I could see it in my mind's eye. I saw your eyes narrow. And suddenly, the humanity in you came up. Here is this obscure woman whose talent had gone unrecognized. And if I can speak to that same program, for me, the most poignant moment, the one I carry with me since that moment, was when Simon Cowell asked Susan Boyle, well, why haven't you been discovered yet? And she replied, because I haven't been given a chance. And that's how I feel about the people of Gaza. That's how I feel about those young men in Gaza. You ask me why I won't condemn them. Because those young men were born into a concentration camp. They were born into among the most dense populated places on God's earth. Half of the population of Gaza is children. 70% are refugees who were expelled from Israel in 1948 and their descendants. 70% of Gaza's youth have no jobs, no future, no nothing. They are Susan Boyle times 10,000, never given a chance. And as things looked the night before October 7th, when the question of Gaza was disappearing from the public stage, I will admit to you, Piers, I myself had given up on Gaza. In 2020, I decided it's hopeless, it's pointless, I only have a finite number of years left in my life, and it's time for me to move on. And I'll tell you, that was a wrenching decision on my part, because I knew I was abandoning the people who for 15 years I had devoted my life to chronicling every detail of the horror that had been inflicted on those people. And I gave up on them.
Okay.
And that meant if I gave up, they had no future because I was the last chronicler.
Okay, but what I would say,
Gaza.
All right, but what
I have the only book
but Professor,
that's been written on the subject.
Let me respond. I would respond by saying that what people in Israel would say, and what Jewish people would say, particularly who live in Israel, is that they were facing a constant barrage of rockets from Hamas. That Hamas won political power in 2005-6. That they were given a huge amount of money. And could have done whatever they wanted with that money, but chose to pursue a path of effectively terrorizing the Israelis over that period. And the Israelis, you're right, they responded they have a far superior military, and they responded in the way that they did. And this cycle has been going on in repeat and repeat and repeat. But where you and I differ...
Yo, it just makes me think about this old article, this old interview Tupac did a long time ago. I think you've seen it before, but now it just really resonates me what can cause people. Tupac talks about how a person could be having a party, people could want to come to the party, and they start off come to the party they're on the outside of the door saying, hey, we want to come in and party with you, you singing, we want to party with you. Time go by, hey, let us in so we can party with you, and then it turns to we kicking down the door, we blasting, so it's just like time when you continuously hold off a population of people, when you continuously hold them back from letting them in, or letting them have their freedoms on their land and not be dictated, let Israel be the dictator over Gaza. Eventually people are going to fight back, and that's what it looks like has happened. And I'm in support of, like I said, I'm not in support of either side. I'm in support of Christ, but this is what it looks like a repercussion of.
About this is that I think what happened on October the 7th was just on a different scale to anything we've seen, and the way it was carried out. And I just don't think saying that people who have been oppressed, which they undoubtedly were for many years, that justifies them committing that act of terror. But let's take a break. Let's come back after the break and discuss this more.
And honestly, I think we're going to stop right there.
Okay.
Because it just going from there, it just pretty much keeps going until why does he support, because Piers feels like it's heinous, whereas Norman is like, I'm not saying exact words, but this is what I'm in support of, and this is the reason why they're kind of doing, this is why this is happening. And I've been over there for a long time.
Right, and for him to say that he has been chronicling their lives for 15 years, such a long time to really be clear and know what's going on.
Correct.
And to be able to see it, it was just like, wow. He was just saying that they have no hope. They have no future. It's just sad. It's beyond sad.
And that must be his calling where he said, man, I given up, man. He was like, I only got to find out. I only have so many years left of my life. But then now he's go back and said, when you realize that's what you're supposed to be doing with your life and the years left of your life. So this is crazy. This is tough. And then I told you, there's a lot of theories coming out to say that's why 9/11, America helping Israel.
Oh, really?
Israel is the one that paid for somebody to hit the boom, boom, bam, funded by America.
Really?
Land grab.
And based off what I've seen just over these past 8 months to a year in what's been going on in our government, I don't put anything past people anymore. I do know that there are political officials that do things upright. I still believe that we have people in office that are going to look out for the people. So, and hopefully that's going to happen in that situation. How and when, it's going to happen, I don't know.
Correct.
But I still have to have some faith to know that God is still in the mix and he's going to get the last laugh.
So we tell y'all on this comment, he will. Be respectful for the comment section. I mean, this just really where we just getting the understanding. But again, be respectful. If not, then, there's no need to see comments if you get my drift. So That was good.
Yeah, it
And
was.
now I
And
have a
just
lot more
learning more,
understanding.
right? So now I need to look at a different
Lens.
documentary or look at something different, because even if you're looking at a documentary, it's going to give you the history, but it still kind of paints a particular picture.
Exactly.
So now I need to dig a little deeper and see what else is out there to have a better, just to understand, more. But your heart still has to go out to all of the people, because
Everybody.
yeah, it's still sad.
We only see this view of seeing October 7th, but you got to still see the overall picture before you can make any kind of say. All right, lead them to the water, baby.
All right, great people. Thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate all of your support. Go back and check out some of our other videos. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.